Okay. St. Patrick College of
Good evening, dear participants. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I welcome you all for the second day of the ATAL sponsored 6-day online FDP on foundations and applications of data science. So today for the session 3 of the second day, we have with us Mr. Mohammed Riaz. So he is the Vice President Technology of JB Morgan Chase, Singapore. He is our speaker of the day, and he is going to handle the session on explanatory data analysis and data visualization. So Mr. Mohammed Riaz has over 20 years of experience in finance and technology and has established himself as a leader in transformation and mentorship. He's currently the Vice President and Lead Technical Program Manager at JB Morgan, where he drives the flagship technology programs in the advisory space. Earlier at the firm, he led a platform adoption, system decommissioning, and initiatives in CRM, brokerage, trading, and lending. Riaz had begun his career at Temenos, supporting the global banks on the T24 platform. So before moving on to the Optimum Solutions and later to the Credit Suisse, which is now UBS, where he had delivered regulatory and change management programs in private banking and wealth management. At Ernst & Young Advisory Singapore, he managed the process transformation initiatives for private banks. He is equally passionate about the talent development, mentoring the global teams, designing the learning programs, and contributing to senior forums. Riaz holds a BTech IT degree from the University of Madras and a PG diploma in Business Administration HRM from Symbiosis. And he's a specialist diploma in Data Science for Business from Temasek Polytech, Singapore. His certifications include PMP, ITIL Practitioner, CSM, CSPO, AWS Cloud Practitioner, and a certificate in Financial Markets from Yale University. And welcome, sir. Welcome, Mr. Mohammed Riaz. So,
Hi.
yeah,
Can you hear me
sir.
properly? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you're audible. Yes, sir. Welcome, sir. Welcome. And I now hand over the session to Mr. Riaz.
Okay.
Dear participants, actually, you will have to hereafter look for your feedbacks and other related information. That is the links for placing the feedbacks in the Teams chatbot. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction and warm welcome to everyone on the session. Let me start by sharing my screen. Yeah, can someone confirm if you're able to see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, thank you. Right. So today's session, we're going to be focusing on some of the fundamentals of exploratory data analysis and also some parts of data visualization. So I'm going to be focusing on some of the key principles, or the common techniques used, some of the tools, and also some best practices to get a better understanding of what our EDA is all about. So you already had a quick introduction, just a short one. So currently I work at JP Morgan as a lead technical program manager with over 20 years of experience in the technology financial services domain. I've previously worked at Temenos, Chennai, Optimum Solutions in Singapore, Credit Suisse in Singapore, and also EY. Background, BTech in IT, postgraduate diploma in business administration, and also a specialist diploma in data science. Certifications across multiple streams, personally passionate about mentoring, talent development, and innovation. So we'll begin by understanding what EDA is and what's the purpose of this session. Then we'll explore some of the importance and the fundamentals of EDA, followed by essential techniques and handling some dirty data that's available. We'll also discuss data visualization best practices. What are the tools for EDA applications in research and teaching? And we'll conclude with a recap and some key takeaways. So we set the stage by outlining the purpose and objectives of this session. So for this session, we're going to be focusing on trying to understand why is EDA important, what is actually the definition of exploratory data analysis or EDA, why is it critical for data insights. We'll look at some of the techniques. There's a lot of abundant techniques out there. We won't, I mean, a 1.5 hour is definitely not enough to cover the whole bundle of techniques that's available to perform EDA, and also the same applies for creating effective data visualization. We'll also review some of the common EDA tools and practical applications across some of the industries. So I'll try to explain through some real-life examples to get a better understanding. We also will look at what are the best practices, a summary of key practices that you need to look at to perform successful exploratory data analysis. So we are first going to look at the critical role of what EDA plays, especially in the field of engineering and analytics, define how EDA is positioned within the whole data science domain. And also we are going to explore different types of analysis to gain some comprehensive insights from the data that's available. So I believe most of you have probably attended an introduction on data science, and you know why data science is key. The large volume of data that is being churned out every day, every second as we speak, and the quality of the volume of that data keeps increasing day by day. So there's a lot that we can do as part of using that data to make our lives better, make this world a better place to live in. And that's where the EDA forms a critical or a basic piece of data science, as it helps us understand the data's characteristics to detect anomalies and also make some informed decision making. So it's really essential first step before we start applying all the complex models or drawing conclusions when you're talking about like AI, machine learning, and so on. Even if all that is nothing if we really don't have a proper data setup and a proper EDA setup in place. So just to deep dive into that, so what are some of the key things why EDA is really important in the field of engineering, research, and analytics? So first thing is to understand the data characteristics. So the EDA techniques help us, especially engineers, to comprehend what are some of the properties of the data and the patterns within the data. When I say properties, it can be as simple as saying it's a decimal, it's a numeric integer, or it's a quantitative data, to other complex characteristics. Then the second point is about pattern discovery. Now, pattern discovery, the simplest form, I think most of us, either when we were quite young in schools, We've probably gone through a lot of pattern finding exercises where the teacher shares with you a simple pattern of, let's say, numbers 1, 3, 3, 5, 1, 3, 3, 5, and asks you to find out, okay, what's the common pattern in there? Now imagine doing that with pages or volumes of data. That's where we need the tools to come in and help. So EDA, which basically helps you identify the patterns within that complex amount of data, enabling all the researchers and the engineers to find better or meaningful insights that again helps them further their goals. Data, as in you know that it doesn't always come clean, it's always messy. So there's going to be a lot of anomalies or incorrect data that's going to be available for you when you start off with your data analysis. So detecting anomalies is a key part of exploratory data analysis. So we look at all those unusual data points or outliers that could impact ultimately the accuracy of the model that you're going to prepare. The hypothesis testing. So EDA supports testing, especially as part of research fields. A lot of initial hypothesis has to be done before they start putting into a proof of concept or actually building out a proof of concept model, things like that. So hypothetically, how is this model going to work? What are the key factors that I need to look into? All those are addressed through EDA. Lastly, informed decision making. So the insights that is derived from EDA helps the engineers make better informed choices before actually starting to go and do complex modeling exercises. So in short, EDA basically helps engineers understand data characteristics, detect unusual or anomalies or unusual data, and then helps them make better decisions before they start building out complex models or even drawing some conclusions. Okay, let's deep dive a bit more into why we think EDA really matters with some examples. Just a quick check. Can someone confirm just to make sure the slide is moving? You're looking at a slide with a table with like orange shade.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's look at some of the examples which will give you a better understanding of like why EDA is really important as a first step in data analysis. So number one, the distribution. So let's talk about an example. Let's talk about maybe Amazon or Flipkart as an example, the e-commerce sites out there. So I assume that I'm going to get some transaction data from one of the e-commerce sites, and I put it in a nice histogram or bar chart, and I look at it, and I can see that
Hello, sir. You are muted, sir.
okay, sorry, I don't know how that is. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, let me share again. Okay, screen share is okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe let me just restart that. Probably we missed that part. Okay, so let's talk about the first example. Talking about an e-commerce site, like say Amazon or Flipkart, is you're looking at some of the data. Let's assume you're a data analyst working for Amazon, and you're looking at a lot of a chart that shows you the orders for the transactions for the last month, and you see that there's a highly right skewed. We'll look at some of the examples later, but when I say right skewed, I see some of the large value orders.
You are muted again.
Okay, I don't know why that keeps happening. Try again. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hopefully that's happen again. So yeah, so going back to the example, so I see some heavily right skew data, so which gives me the insight that I'm not getting enough of the large value orders. So that means that my revenue probably is not going to make a big difference with the small orders. So that's an action that I have to take to make sure how can we improve or how can we get more large value orders from your customers. Number two, and taking an example of let's say you're talking about a plants, a plant in the sense that a manufacturing plant, and there's some temperature data recorded from the two plants, let's say some boiler plants, and then we have boiler data in terms of the temperature recorded. Let's say the two plants, they are measuring data in different attributes. So one measures in Celsius and other in Fahrenheit. Now, when I get that data and I mix them up and I try to do some analysis, that's definitely going to create some misleading charts, or it's going to break models. So this is where EDA comes into place, where we have to make sure that we follow the a consistent range, units, and scaling. Number three, granularity and aggregation level. So the example that we're talking about here is the usage of electricity. So again, look at an electricity company which is monitoring what are the peak loads of electricity usage. And let's say I'm going to do overall average data. So if I do a full day average, it's going to be misleading. It's going to be giving me a wrong pattern, because assume from all the way until midnight to 7 p.m. the usage is very low, but only at 7 to 9 p.m. the usage is very high. But then when I do a daily average, it's going to show me a much lower number and hiding the reality. And again, this is where EDA comes into picture, so that we distribute the data such that we take out the outliers. Basically, the 7 to 9 p.m. is, in this example, is considered an outlier, and then we treat it differently from the analysis perspective. Moving on to number 4, missingness, amount, and pattern. So in this case, we're talking about an example of, let's say, hospital vitals. I believe most of you should be aware of what happens when you're admitted in a hospital. The staff nurse typically comes over every hour, every 2 hours, depending on the hospital, and takes your vitals, body vitals. And they note it down, and this is the data that gets transformed or translated in for further analysis. Now, it is possible that in a hospital overnight, the staffing pattern might be lower, meaning lesser staff there. And as a result, the number of entries, or it could be the other way around, where typically there's a possibility that for at least for normal, not critical patients, the measurements may not be done as regularly as per 1 hour or every 2 hours. It can be at a lower frequency. So again, if we want to get an average of this value in terms of the vitals measurement of patients throughout the day or across days, it's going to give you some missing values there. And that's where we have some techniques to, as part of EDA, basically we call it imputation. That is to replace some of those missing values with maybe an average value or a mean value. However, in this example, as I was saying, we cannot put in a global mean value, because the patterns at night is going to be completely different. So you have to do a time of day value. So again, EDA matters here. So now talking about number 5, outliers and anomalies. The example here is a very common one. We all do UPI payments. So assume as part of the testing, system testing, the UPI company, the organization, does has some production staging IDs. So where they do some test transactions to make sure the system is working fine and all that. So they might put in some number like 900,000 or 1 million or 1 lakh or 1 crore, something like that. Now, when they do this, typically, UPI payments are not this high value. Yeah, so it's definitely much lower value transactions that happen on UPI. Now, when I try to do some analysis on the transaction data for that UPI organization, again, these are outliers or anomalies which needs to be detected and removed. If not, you're going to get a wrong analysis or finding. Going on to number 6, relationship between variables. So here we take an example of telecommunication operators. So typically in telecom data, the data usage of data by the consumer and the plan, basically the mobile plan that they have taken, they are correlated. What it means is based on the price, the usage will also increase or decrease. However, there's also another factor called customer tenure. So typically, if it's a new user, there's a possibility that the behavior is different. So this is where, again, the whole concept of correlation association comes into picture as part of, again, as part of your EDA techniques to help you differentiate that pattern or the different variable there and get a more meaningful insight from the data. Number 7, segmentation and heterogeneity. So here we talk about an example of student performance. So let's say we're looking at the academic scores of exams. Let's talk about at a district level or at a city level or a state level. So let's assume we take the scores at the whole district level and try to do an average. It can hide some inconvenient truths. So for example, urban schools, I think it's a known reality, tend to perform far better than students from rural schools. So this is where, again, EDA plays a role where we make sure that the segmentation is properly handled and the heterogeneity in the data is exposed so that it doesn't get hidden. Then we talk about number 8, class imbalance, rare events. So here we're talking about data, huge volumes of data, but then there are some rare events that could happen. So the classic example comes in terms of compliance or bank compliance checks. So we talk about fraudulent transactions. So typically fraudulent transactions on average, I mean, it's not an absolute number, but typically they say that usually it's only like 0.3% of the entire volume of transactions. And especially for me, like I'm working a multinational bank, and the volume of transactions that we're talking in millions. And in millions, if you're talking about 0.3% of the transaction is actually fraudulent, and that's what I have to detect as part of my data analysis, that's going to be a big thing to do. So this is where it means that like if you develop a model based on this data without considering some of those rare events, which may not happen all the time, you will get a skewed model end of the day. So again, there are different techniques like F1 AUC technique, stratify splits, resampling techniques that can be used to reduce this class imbalance and get a much better model output. Number 9 is talking about time dependence, seasonality, and lags. So the classic example that we are referring to here is the correlation between rainfall and dengue or say malaria cases in a particular location. So assume it rains heavily this week. So if I were to take the data of how much rainfall was recorded this week, and then I also take data on how many dengue cases or malaria cases were reported this week, I'm most likely not going to get a proper analysis output. And you know why? Because typically if you have like 1 week of continuous heavy rain, typically there's no mosquito breeding, but the mosquito breeding usually starts after the rain has subsided because of all those puddles and water not drained out kind of situations. So this is where, again, EDA comes into play, and you add that feature called a lag feature. So basically what I should be doing is, if I'm taking the rainfall measurement for this week, probably I should consider taking the dengue case number maybe 2-3 weeks later. Typically, that's when the breeding starts and the spread also starts. And the last point, 10, data quality and leakage checks. So this is an example again from a retail sales world. So typically the retail sales, you have options to, from an online shopping experience, you probably have options to return back items. Maybe they were not properly delivered or some defects or something like that. And then you get back a refund. So again, these retail sales firms, they try to predict what is the rate of such return and refunds based on the data. But what if that data already includes the numbers that have already been returned or refunded? Then again, it causes skewed output because I'm not predicting the future because the future has already been added into my current data. Okay, moving on. I'm just going to share a quick video. It's a very interesting video. Typically, it's shared for all foundational data science lessons. I'm going to just play that out. Just let me know if the audio is played.
Visualize.
Can I just confirm if are you able to hear the audio?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Visualization is right at the heart of my own work too. I teach global health. And I know having the data is not enough. I have to show it in ways people both enjoy and understand. Now, I'm going to try something I've never done before. Animating the data in real space, with a bit of technical assistance from the crew.
So, here we go. First, an axis for health, life expectancy, from 25 years to 75 years. And down here, an axis for wealth, income per person, $400, $4,000, and $40,000. So down here is poor and sick, and up here is rich and healthy. Now, I'm going to show you the world 200 years ago, in 1810. Here come all the countries. Europe brown, Asia red, Middle East green, Africa south of Sahara blue, and the Americas yellow. And the size of the country bubbles show the size of the population. And in 1810, it was pretty crowded down there, wasn't it? All countries were sick and poor. Life expectancy were below 40 in all countries. And only UK and the Netherlands were slightly better off, but not much. And now, why start the world? The Industrial Revolution makes countries in Europe and elsewhere move away from the rest. But the colonized countries in Asia and Africa, they are stuck down there. And eventually, the Western countries get healthier and healthier. And now we slow down to show the impact of the First World War and the Spanish flu epidemic. What a catastrophe! And now I speed up through the 1920s and the 1930s. And in spite of the Great Depression, Western countries forge on towards greater wealth and health. Japan and some others try to follow, but most countries stay down here. Now, after the tragedies of the Second World War, we stop a bit to look at the world in 1948. 1948 was a great year. The war was over, Sweden topped the medal table at the Winter Olympics, and I was born. But the differences between the countries of the world was wider than ever. United States was in the front, Japan was catching up. Brazil was way behind, Iran was getting a little richer from oil, but still had short lives. And the Asian giants, China, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Indonesia, they were still poor and sick down here. But look what is about to happen. Here we go again. In my lifetime, former colonies gained independence, and then finally they started to get healthier and healthier and healthier. And in the 1970s, then countries in Asia and Latin America started to catch up with the Western countries. They became the emerging economies. Some in Africa follows. Some Africans were stuck in civil war and others hit by HIV. And now we can see the world today in the most up-to-date statistics. Most people today live in the middle, but there are huge differences at the same time between the best of countries and the worst of countries. And there are also huge inequalities within countries. These bubbles show country averages, but I can split them. Take China, I can split it into provinces. There goes Shanghai. It has the same wealth and health as Italy today. And there is the poor inland province Guizhou. It is like Pakistan. And if I split it further, the rural parts are like Ghana in Africa.
And yet, despite the enormous disparities today, we have seen 200 years of remarkable progress. That huge historical gap between the West and the rest is now closing. We have become an entirely new converging world. And I see a clear trend into the future. With aid, trade, green technology and peace, it's fully possible that everyone can make it to the healthy, wealthy corner.
Well, what you just seen in the last few minutes is a story of 200 countries shown over 200 years and beyond. It involved plotting of 120,000 numbers. Pretty neat, huh?
Okay, so hopefully you enjoy that video. So I think it's typically the key message there was to show you how data, the quality of data, the number of data points I was talking about, 125 plus data points that have to be in there to get that best visualization, that impact of how you see the health situation of the world has improved. So going back to the presentation, I'm sharing again. Okay, so let's next talk about defining exploratory data analysis and what is its role in data science. So EDA is the process by which you need to you summarize and visualize data to uncover patterns and also to gain insights. And that becomes your foundation to analyze or further analysis or even do data modeling. So purpose of EDA, it helps you to summarize the key data characteristics. Now, these data characteristics in turn help you identify what are some of the trends, patterns, and any anomalies in a very effective manner. Importance of visualizing this data through graphs and other charts. These enhance, like they say, a picture speaks better than 1,000 words. So it's the same principle applied here. So it enhances your understanding of how the different data attributes are related, the relationships are clear, and how they are distributed in data sets. And lastly, as a foundation for further analysis and modeling, like I said, this is the very first step. If you don't do this properly, all the models that you build further to feed into your machine learning tools or AI aspects is not going to work. So this step is really critical in enabling better modeling and also decision making in data science workflows. Now let's take the next step. So we take a look at what are the different types of EDA that are out there. So we define 3 types: univariate, bivariate, and multivariate. And as the terms are described, they're quite easy. So univariate studies, basically this is an analysis which studies individual variables to understand how they are distributed, what are their characteristics. Bivariate, it examines the relationship with 2 different variables, again to find what are the correlations and patterns. Multivariate analysis, it explores multiple variables simultaneously, again to uncover complex interactions and insights. So let's take a step further and look at a bit more into univariate analysis. So univariate analysis, as I mentioned earlier, it examines individual variables, and then it can be classified, the univariate data can be classified into the following. So number 1, unique identifier or ID. So for this slide, let's assume we're looking at a table of employee data in an organization. Okay. So if I look at an employee data, the first thing I would do, I would look at is probably an ID. So every employee will have an ID, which is going to be unique. Now, the key thing to note here is an ID is unique and it doesn't have any kind of particular quality associated with it other than the uniqueness. So you cannot, based on the ID, you cannot say, oh, this person is a senior person or this person is a junior person, or this person joined in early, or this person joined later, or this person is a director, or this person is. So uniqueness of an ID is the specific quality of a unique identifier type of variable. Next, we have a numerical, which is quantitative. Again, with the numerical, there are two types: discrete and continuous. So numerical, as you know, is a number type of data. Now, when it's discrete, it means that it has clearly discrete values, and it cannot have decimals. So again, looking back at the example of employee data in an organization, I can have a column in there which says how many family members does this employee have, number of family members, and that's going to be a discrete number. You cannot have 4.5 family members as a data point there, right? So you can only have like 2, 3, 4, depending on that. Whereas continuous type of numerical univariate data is something which can have decimals. So again, going back to the example, we can have a column called income of that particular employee.
Subhashini ma'am? Sabita ma'am husband. அவர் அங்கிருந்து வர்றப்பதான் கோல்டா வாங்கிட்டு வருவார்.
Subhashini V, can you please mute your? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Okay, so continuous data set can have numbers with decimals. So again, going back to the example of employee data, I can have a column which says income. So as you know, income can have decimal data. I can have 10,000 rupees and 50 paisa as an example. So that is continuous. Then we have categorical or qualitative data. Again, there are two subtypes under this, is called ordinal or nominal. So categorical data deals with descriptions or categories, as the name says, is based on categories. So these have specific aggregative properties. And what is ordinal and nominal? So ordinal, if to help you understand with an example, with again going back to the employee data table, I can have a column called designation, under which you can have manager, senior manager, CEO, or just a junior staff. Okay. Now the key quality, as you can see, this ordinal, it has a particular order to it. and that's where the term ordinal also comes, right? So when I see that column, I can say, oh, CEO, this person has to be the top of the chain. And then you have a senior manager and then a manager below that person, and so on. So ordinal, typically the data provides that kind of order definition to it. Whereas nominal is the other type, which does not have any particular order. So one classic example for this could be, again, on the employee data that we're talking about, is location. So location of the employee. So assume the company has multiple branches, and then the employee could be located in one of those branches. So again, so this is nominal. This is a descriptive variable, but it doesn't have any order to it. So it doesn't mean any order to it. So next we could look into bivariate analysis. So again, this is, as I mentioned, it examines the relationship between two different variables to see if there's any kind of pattern or connection that exists between the two variables. It typically uses methods like correlation or regression to find patterns and associations. Now, this type of analysis, usually it helps us identify how one variable might explain or influence another. And this is usually referred to as asymmetrical analysis, or simply you can see those two variables and see if there's a general association. It's called symmetrical analysis. So asymmetrical analysis is where one variable might be able to explain or influence the other variable, whereas symmetrical analysis talks about a general association between the two variables. Now let's look at some examples to understand better. Before we go into that, the correlation coefficient is a very common terminology when it comes to bivariate data analysis. So there's a way you can calculate the correlation coefficient, and the value of that calculation it'll always fall between -1 and +1. So when you put that on a chart like this, some of the examples given there, you will achieve 2 or 3 types of correlation. So the first chart, what I'm doing is I'm plotting the x values there and y values. I can see that as my x value increases, my y value also increases. So this is referred to as positive correlation. Now, contrary to that, the second chart, I can see as my x value increases, my y value actually decreases. Okay, so, and this is called negative correlation. And the third one is where we say no correlation, because you can see that there's no particular pattern of like if I increase x, y must increase or decrease. It doesn't really show anything. So we conclude that no correlation. Again, a variation of this could be a partial correlation can also be seen where some data points can form a cluster, meaning like all these dot in the third chart, all these dots may not be spread apart. Maybe some forms like small clusters together. So going back to examples of where bivariate analysis is used. So one example in the education and research field is where researchers can actually analyze. So let's take an example of, I'm going to put the number of hours a student spends reading the textbooks, for example. And then on my y-axis, I would plot their test exam scores. A positive correlation in this scenario means that more time spent reading leads to better scores, or vice versa. Another example is in the field of marketing. So marketing businesses actually use bivariate analysis to determine if there's some kind of connection between their marketing efforts. So what I'm talking about is like a firm spend a lot on their advertising, marketing, and stuff like that, and their sales figures. So basically, my x-axis is how much I have spent on my advertising, and on my y-axis, I would be looking at how have my sales, what are my sales figures. So I would be able to see that if there's any correlation, if I increase my advertising spend, is my sales going to increase, or it doesn't really matter. So bivariate analysis helps businesses understand their spending patterns. Next, in the field of health and medicine. So I don't know how many of you have heard about this disease called Crohn's disease. It's something related to the bone health. It's a bone related disease. So typically, doctors and medical researchers, they study the correlation between the use of a corticosteroid and the patient's bone mineral density. So basically, I would put the corticosteroid intake by the patients on the x-axis and the mineral density measurements on the y-axis, and then it will tell me whether use of this particular steroid in patients is actually improving the bone density of the patients or not. So that's again another use case of bivariate analysis. In the field of economics, a bivariate analysis can investigate the relationship between a person's age and their yearly income. So this helps them to understand how the wealth distribution happens within a population. So again, this is useful for financial firms to do targeted marketing campaigns of their products. A last example in terms of fitness, body fitness. So from a physical activity and health perspective, we can explore the relationship between a person's height and weight to find correlations between these physical attributes. So put in height on the x-axis and weight on the y-axis and see if there's any correlation. And the last type is multivariate analysis. So this is the most complex type of techniques that we have out there. So typically we use a lot of, this is not easy to just put it on a straightforward chart to see. And even the chart example that you see on this page, for those who have not seen this before, this is called a spider chart. Now this has to be, you have to visualize this in a 3D way. So typically, the lines in between those circles, those not really circles, but those hexagons are in a 3D fashion. They're going in deep there. So multivariate analysis, we use many techniques to simultaneously simulate the relationship between 3 or more variables and understand and gives us helps us understand more complex data structures and what are their inherent meanings. Oops, sorry. So why is multivariate analysis used? As I mentioned, real world situations, typically they don't call for isolated 1 or 2 variables. So we have to look at multiple variables together to identify any kind of interrelationships. So multivariate analysis helps you identify these intricate relationships or correlations or patterns, and then helps making better predictions or classifying data, predicting outcomes, etc. Okay, some of the examples in medicine, typically for understanding the recurrence of cancer tumor. So medical researchers, they use multiple clinical factors like age, tumor size, the node size, etc. And based on that, they come up with some kind of predictions models to detect if cancer can recur in that particular patient or for a particular group. In the field of marketing, understanding customer behavior and segmenting the markets, again, by analyzing multiple customer attributes simultaneously is a very common thing that happens. So companies, the marketing firms, they look at different customer attributes together from a multivariate analysis perspective and try to understand the customer behavior. And based on that, they would go ahead and segment the markets, again, more targeted marketing campaigns. In the field of psychology, psychologists typically use multivariate analysis to understand how multiple psychological factors relate to one another in a complex social phenomena. Okay, so we just spoke about correlation. Now, one other term just introducing to you here is causation. So it's always confusing sometimes. So I'll just put in a video to give you a funny perspective of what is correlation versus causation. Just give me a second, let me get that out. Okay, play the video now. If you don't hear the sound, please just shut up.
Like most people, I enjoy a tasty scoop of ice cream, especially Oreo blizzards. But what few people realize is how dangerous a treat ice cream has become. First, there's the issue of obesity. Second, there are higher crime rates. Third, there's the loss of life due to a rise in the number of drowning deaths. And finally, as more ice cream is sold, there's an increase in forest fires. Given these indisputable facts, I need you to support my vision of an ice cream-free world. While banning ice cream trucks from entering your neighborhood may sound far-fetched, when it comes to problem solving, a common issue is misunderstanding the difference between correlation and causation. This misunderstanding can influence our decisions, sometimes with serious consequences that ripple throughout a community. Correlation is when two things are related, but one does not cause the other. Usually this means the two are in some way related to a third factor, but not always. If you have a big enough pile of data, you can find plenty of relationships that are purely coincidental, like the strong relationship between the sale of margarine and divorce rates in the state of Maine. With the sale of ice cream, the third factor is weather. When it is hot outside, people buy more ice cream. They are more likely to go for a swim, and there is a general increase in people out and about enjoying the weather, helping improve conditions for crime to take place, as well as the dry conditions associated with forest fires. A note of caution, there is a growing trend in our digital world called data dredging. This is using analytics to sift through mountains of data, hoping to find useful relationships. Instead of a problem in search of a solution, dredging data is a solution looking to find a problem. All of what I've just discussed about correlations does not mean that finding a correlation is without value. In fact, correlations are a vital part of helping us move to the next step, the discovery of causation. Unlike correlation, causation is when you can claim that one thing causes another thing to happen. In order to make this claim, you need to be able to demonstrate an actual cause and effect relationship, preferably a strong relationship. An example most of us are familiar with is the pharmaceutical industry. In order to make the claim that a particular drug causes a certain effect, such as lowering your cholesterol or growing hair, the FDA requires companies support those claims, putting the drug through a 4-phase, 12-step process that takes approximately 12 years. This process uses control groups and clinical trials to test the drug, making sure that X causes Y and that the drug is safe. The acceptable error rate can go as high as 5% for some drugs, meaning that the clinical trials prove that there's a 95% chance the drug does what it claims. Drugs with serious health implications, such as those used to treat a heart condition, are held to an even stricter standard, requiring proof up to 99% effectiveness. Back to ice cream. What about ice cream and obesity? While it may seem like common sense that it does cause obesity, the fact is that we don't yet know the true strength of the relationship. If we look at the sale of ice cream, there's actually an inverse relationship with weight. People gain weight in the winter when sales are low and lose weight in the warm summer months when more ice cream is being consumed. This might suggest ice cream is the new diet food. Luckily, you now know to be cautious of drawing conclusions of causation from correlation. Instead, recent research on the subject has been looking at different types of sugars used in making a wide range of sweet foods. What scientists have discovered is that the hypothalamus, which is an area of the brain that regulates the human appetite, reacts differently when we consume foods with fructose instead of glucose. This has researchers speculating that eating high fructose foods, such as ice cream, may result in people not feeling full, so they continue to eat. This theory proves difficult, however, when we start considering apples and other natural fruits also contain fructose, not just ice cream and chocolate cake. As you can see, causation is quite a bit different than correlation. Finding correlations is easy, proving causation is hard. No wonder it takes 12 years just to prove that a pill causes hair to grow. The bottom line, on the news, in boardrooms and coffee shops, everywhere you go, you will hear claims that X causes Y. From politics to the weather, from the stock market to personal relationships, it is human nature to try and explain things, to create stories that make sense. Just keep in mind, as you hear a claim of what causes what, that correlation is not causation.
Okay, I hope that video was a bit insightful and gave you a better understanding of what correlation and what causation is, was the differences between them. So quickly moving on to the next segment, we're going to talk about some of the essential EDA techniques and how to handle dirty data. EDA techniques, the common techniques are summary statistics, data distributions, and relationships. Now, what is summary statistics? So these are the typical things you probably learned even in school: mean, median, variance. So these basically summarize the central tendency and how the data is spread in a very efficient manner. Then we have data distribution techniques. This involves creating histograms, box plots. This helps you visualize the distribution and also helps you detect outliers in data sets. We'll look into a bit more on histograms and box plots on a later slide. Then we have also variable relationships. This is basically scatter plots, just like an example we saw earlier in terms of the positive versus negative correlations. So the scatter plots. So these reveal correlations and relationships between two numerical variables. Now, as I've been mentioning, identifying and addressing missing, inconsistent, and outlier data is a very critical component of exploratory data analysis. So basically, why do we need to detect missing data? Number one, it is to prevent any bias analysis. So if there's data missing on a particular, maybe say we're putting a male versus female analysis, Then if there's a lot of missing data for one of the genders, then that's going to create some biased outcomes. Why do we need to address inconsistent data? Similarly, it creating inconsistencies. It ensures the uniformity and it takes away the uniformity and reliability in the data sets. Outlier data, it could be one or two examples that might just skew the entire average. So that's why it's very important for us to identify and manage the outliers to prevent any results from getting skewed and improve the overall accuracy. So just to summarize how EDA improves the data quality and analytical outcomes through data exploration. So basically the very first step of EDA is where we explore the data, we look for patterns, we look for anomalies, we understand the data set comprehensively before trying to do any kind of further investigation or modeling. Cleaning data is again a critical component, so we need to remove all the errors and inconsistencies. This will ensure much better accuracy in your outcomes. And lastly, properly clean data through EDA gives you better models and reliable insights. So now we move on to data visualization. We look at some of the principles and practices for data visualizations to start with. So like I said, a picture speaks louder than 1,000 words, but it's also important to get that picture right in the first place, because that otherwise you're going to create even more confusion. So what are the basic principles of effective visualization? So we have a few here. The first one is clarity in visualization. So we need to really be careful on creating very clear visuals. Eliminate clutter. That's the very important keyword there. And this is really important to ensure that the audience understands the data being presented. You put in a slide, you put in like 10 different charts in there, your audience is definitely going to get lost. So clarity is the first important point to take note for effective visualization. Number two, match visualization to data. So this is where you have to choose the right visualization type. So there are some examples we'll look at later. So there are based on the data and based on the data structure and also based on the relationship between the variables, it's important for us to understand what is the exact type of visual that I need to include on that particular presentation for the audience to understand better. Consider analysis goals. Again, key. I mean, you have a lot of data, you can create hundreds of charts, but if 95 out of those 100 charts are not really useful to achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve through that particular presentation, let's say you're going to probably be presenting to the head of the organization or like a board of directors or something like that. It's very key for you to understand what are you expecting as an outcome of this presentation, and then base your visuals based on that. Simplicity focus. So simple designs are always the best. They highlight key messages, marketing data, accessible and straightforward. And lastly, relevance to audience. So it's important that we just don't copy paste whatever is coming out of a particular tool, even if you're doing AI, is using, for example, AI tools to generate some data charts or something like that. Always think about, put yourself in the shoes of the audience, the people who are going to make a decision or listen to you, and then ensure that the information is meaningful and actionable. The other aspects that you have to take care to create more effective visualization is color theory fundamentals. So again, for this particular short session, I won't be able to deep dive too much into that, but as part of data science courses and trainings, we are taught like there are certain colors which don't really go into a presentation, certain colors that can evoke negative reactions or negative thoughts from the audience. Similarly, what are the best colors that you can actually use to give a good appeal to your design and create some positive emotions for the presentation. So color theory fundamentals are important to understand for when you're putting together something for data visualization. A balanced layout design, again, just the way you lay out the charts or your text on the presentation is going to be pretty important. So all the analysis that you have done on the data, when you're presenting it to your audience, just make sure that the layout is guides the users or the viewers naturally and also improves their comprehension. So it shouldn't be a situation where the audience is trying to look here and there and trying to find a link of what comes first and what comes next. And then lastly, interactive features. So this, whenever possible, it's good to have interactive features. If you remember the first YouTube video that I shared earlier, where they created a simulation where the guy was drawing some charts in the air and all that. So if there was an example where he used an interactive element. So basically, if you remember that example of breaking down China, so he clicked on one of the China bars and broke it down into Shanghai and some other place. So those things can be done on some of the tools like Tableau, which provides good visualization, interactive visualization options. Okay, so let's. I've been talking about like what is good and a bad visualization. Again, a short video to give you a good understanding of what can be perceived as a good versus a bad visualization.
Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the world of data visualization, but with a twist. We'll be exploring how to master data visualization skills using a Minecraft style. Sounds fun, right? Let's get started. First, let's talk about why data visualization is crucial. Imagine sifting through endless rows of numbers and trying to make sense of it all. Pretty overwhelming, huh? Now picture those same numbers turned into a colorful, interactive chart. Much better. All right, on to the basics. Choosing the right chart type is like picking the right tool for a job in Minecraft. You wouldn't use a wooden pickaxe to mine diamonds, right? Similarly, you shouldn't use a pie chart to show trends over time. Line charts are your go-to for trends, while bar charts are perfect for comparing quantities. Now let's look at a bad example. Imagine a chart with way too many colors, random fonts, and a confusing legend. It's like a Minecraft build with mismatched blocks and no clear structure. Hard to understand and definitely not pleasing to the eye. So how do we fix that? Start by simplifying. Use a harmonious color palette. In Minecraft terms, think of it like using a consistent theme for your build. Stick to a few key colors that complement each other. Also, keep your fonts clean and readable. Arial or Helvetica are always safe bets. Next, let's address the use of color. In Minecraft, colors can represent different biomes or materials. Similarly, in data visualization, colors should have meaning. Use contrasting colors to highlight important data points, but avoid using too many colors. It can make your chart look like a chaotic Minecraft landscape. Another tip is to label your axes and provide clear titles. Think of it like placing signs in your Minecraft world. You want anyone visiting your creation to understand what they're looking at. Labels and titles guide the viewer through your data, making it easier to digest. Alright, let's compare a bad visualization with a good one. On one side we have a cluttered, confusing chart with too many elements. On the other, a clean, well-organized chart with meaningful colors and clear labels. Just like a beautifully built Minecraft house versus a hastily thrown together shack. To sum it up, mastering data visualization is all about clarity, simplicity, and effective use of color. It's like building a masterpiece in Minecraft. It takes practice, but with the right tools and techniques, you can turn any pile of data into a visual work of art. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more tips.
I don't know how many of you are fans of Minecraft, or maybe you have kids, if you have kids who are into Minecraft. But hopefully that gave you some good sights into what are typically good versus bad visualization, especially in terms of when it comes to putting charts and visuals.
Hey.
Okay, so as I was mentioning, some of the common visualization types are histograms, scatter plots, box plots, and heat maps. I'll go a deep dive into each of them. So we start off with a histogram. So this is an example, a sample histogram which shows an organization's revenue per order, with revenue in the x-axis and count in the y-axis. So from a histogram, some of the observations that you can actually look at is you can see a right skewed distribution. So if you look at that last value, so the towards the end, it kind of tapers. So you don't see a lot of orders with revenue with like revenue more than maybe 750. I don't know what's the scale here, but let's say 750 million here. So between 750 million and 1,750 million, you don't really see a lot of orders, or they're very, very minimal to be even shown on the chart. So this means there's a skewed order of distribution. If you remember one of my earlier examples that I was talking about, where I have a lot of sales in the lower order, a lower revenue side, but on the higher revenue side, my order counts is very less. So this gives me an insight to go back to the board and discuss, or maybe propose some things that can be done to improve or increase the number of orders in the higher revenue segment. The second observation is you can see there's multiple peaks. So again, this can this suggest the distinct customer segments or product categories with different price points. And then the third observation is potential zero inflation. Again, note the large first bar. So this can indicate many zero or not near zero transactions. Now, if I look at the analytical implications of this, now this shape has several implications that we can use for our analysis. So we can do log transformation. Again, these are different EDA techniques that help you update, like stabilize the data or the data model to make it more meaningful for analysis and insight. So you can use a logarithmic transformation model, which would normalize the right skew distribution. And then making it more suitable for model analysis. You can use some robust metrics. So instead of you can use median instead of mean for a better central tendency, or you can use interquartile range, another metric for over standard deviation. So these are things you can consider. Again, these are key parts of EDA. Segment analysis. So the multimodal nature suggests natural customer product segments. So you can consider creating categorical groupings based on revenue bands. So instead of grouping all the categories in one chart, that creates confusion. You can try and split them into different charts per category for a more targeted analysis. Outlier investigation, high value transactions warrant special investigation. So they may represent VIP customers, bulk orders, potential data entry errors. So that's again another analytical implication that you will derive out of this chart. So all in all, what I'm trying to say is this one chart that or visual gives me so many observations and analytical implications that I can consider as a data scientist to take it forward to either improve the data or to make it look better, or make it update it or change it in a different way, such that it can give me more or better meaningful insights. The next chart we have is correlation heat map. So this is a different type of chart, which again, there are a lot of ways you can interpret this heat map. So here, color intensity actually indicates correlation strength. So basically, you can see the two variables, how they are correlated. So the darker the color is a stronger correlation. So meaning one unit changes, the other unit also changes. Blue represents positive correlations. Red represents negative correlations, and diagonal cells always show self-correlation. It's always 1.0. Then some of the key insights you can derive from here is redundant features. You can identify redundant features that might cause collinearity issues in some regression models. Then important relationships to preserve when reducing dimensions. These are very advanced terms, so I'm not really touching upon them in detail here, but just sharing the insights that can be derived from a correlation heat map. Then you have this concept of missingness overview. So like I said, missing data is pretty key when you're analyzing a data set. So when you're missing some data in your data set, that there are different techniques by which you can observe first what is missing, how are they critical, how are they going to be impacting my overall quality of the analysis. And then you can decide what are you going to do in terms of fixing that data to get a more meaningful analysis. So the extent of missingness, so basically you can see in each column. For example, if I look at the first column, discount, You can see 3.1% of the values in discount are missing. 3.0% values of price are missing, and so on. Then if there are any patterns to be observed, so patterns of co-occurrence where I see, okay, when I see some values to be missing together, so that can be identified. Or it could be a systematic issue in data collection. So maybe the person who collected the data did not put in made a data error, or missed putting in some data, or maybe even didn't have that field to input when they're using the computer systems. So in this example, you can see customer ID, discount amount, and shipping method all have high missing rates. So suggesting it could be potential issues with customer tracking and order fulfillment systems. In terms of type of missingness, we have 3 types: missing completely at random. So it means that it's just by chance, it's random, right? So there's no relationship to any data, it's just missing at random. And then next is MAR, or missing at random. Here are related, the missing values are related to the data, but not to the missing data itself. So for example, older customers, senior citizens, they may not have email addresses, so they may not have provided email addresses when the data was collected. And then the last one is missing not at random. Here, missing values are related to the values themselves. For example, high income individuals might, again, for tax issues or things like that, they might refuse to report their income. So it's like an intentional missing data. Now, once you have identified the types of missing data, then that's where you define the imputation strategy. That's nothing but how do you backfill the data? I mean, if you can't ignore that value, then how do you fill it? So missingness type, once you analyze, then you use different simple model, or model based on multiple imputations. Sometimes the easiest is to take the average value and filling the missing values. The last one is the box plot. So again, this is the box plot where it interprets multiple variables here. So again, just how do you interpret the box plot? The median, that line you see in the middle, is the median. Then you have the interquartile, basically the percentile ranges from 25 to 70 percentile. So that is indicated by the height of the box. There you see that box in between. And then the range of typical values, the whiskers that you see extending from 1.5 into the IQR. And outliers are those which are beyond the whiskers, those 2 points which are near the 1750 range. So the basic interpretation from this chart, we can see that electronics and furniture, although it's not clearly called out, I just realized that. Apologies for that. So they have the highest median revenue, while books and clothing show substantial outliers. So ideally, there should be a label there to show which is electronics and furniture. So basically, this is looking at the sales records of a particular organization. Okay. Again, for outlier handling methods, there's a few techniques, EDA techniques called Winsorization, transformation, robust methods, and isolation. Okay, then we have the time series charts. So this is typically to identify some, this is an example of a daily revenue trend. So again, the components are, it tells you the trend, upward trajectory indicates good growth, and vice versa. Then seasonality, it also tells you like if there are any seasonal patterns that can be observed during particular times of the year. Anomalies, if there are any unusual data patterns that can be seen. Level shifts, if there's a distinct change in the baseline or benchmark data around a particular period, which can also suggest some kind of structural changes. Again, for EDA techniques to handle this type of data, time series data, we use decomposition, autocorrelation analysis, rolling statistics, resampling. Okay, so moving on. Again, this is an interesting video I just wanted to share with this group. So we do have a lot of data. We do have a lot of analysis available. So we do have a lot of data, a lot of visuals analysis that happens. But ultimately, how do we really spot real data? How do we kind of get confused? So that's that becomes critical. Just going to play that.
A toothpaste brand claims their product will destroy more plaque than any product ever made. A politician tells you their plan will create the most jobs. We're so used to hearing these kinds of exaggerations in advertising and politics that we might not even bat an eye. But what about when the claim is accompanied by a graph? After all, a graph isn't an opinion. It represents cold, hard numbers, and who can argue with those? Yet, as it turns out, there are plenty of ways graphs can mislead and outright manipulate. Here are some things to look out for. In this 1992 ad, Chevy claimed to make the most reliable trucks in America using this graph. Not only does it show that 98% of all Chevy trucks sold in the last 10 years are still on the road, but it looks like they're twice as dependable as Toyota trucks. That is, until you take a closer look at the numbers on the left and see that the figure for Toyota is about 96.5%. The scale only goes between 95 and 100%. If it went from 0 to 100, it would look like this. This is one of the most common ways graphs misrepresent data, by distorting the scale. Zooming in on a small portion of the y-axis exaggerates a barely detectable difference between the things being compared. And it's especially misleading with bar graphs, since we assume the difference in the size of the bars is proportional to the values. But the scale can also be distorted along the x-axis, usually in line graphs showing something changing over time. This chart showing the rise in American unemployment from 2008 to 2010 manipulates the x-axis in two ways. First of all, the scale is inconsistent, compressing the 15th-month span after March 2009 to look shorter than the preceding 6 months. Using more consistent data points gives a different picture, with job losses tapering off by the end of 2009. And if you wonder why they were increasing in the first place, the timeline starts immediately after the US's biggest financial collapse since the Great Depression. These techniques are known as cherry picking. A time range can be carefully chosen to exclude the impact of a major event right outside it. And picking specific data points can hide important changes in between. Even when there's nothing wrong with the graph itself, leaving out relevant data can give a misleading impression. This chart of how many people watch the Super Bowl each year makes it look like the event's popularity is exploding. But it's not accounting for population growth. The ratings have actually held steady, because while the number of football fans has increased, their share of overall viewership has not. Finally, a graph can't tell you much if you don't know the full significance of what's being presented. Both of the following graphs use the same ocean temperature data from the National Centers for Environmental Information. So why do they seem to give opposite impressions? The first graph plots the average annual ocean temperature from 1880 to 2016, making the change look insignificant. But in fact, a rise of even half a degree Celsius can cause massive ecological disruption. This is why the second graph, which shows the average temperature variation each year, is far more significant. When they're used well, graphs can help us intuitively grasp complex data. But as visual software has enabled more usage of graphs throughout all media, it's also made them easier to.
So as you can see, while data visualization is a very good tool that helps provide insights and improve analysis, at the same time, it also can be used for misleading visuals, especially in the marketing world. So hopefully this gives you a good idea. I'll skip that in the interest of time. Just quickly look at some of the popular tools for data, sorry, EDN and data visualization. So the most common tools that used are Pandas, Matplotlib, Seaborn, R, Tableau, and Excel. Again, the use cases of like when these are used are different. So typically, Python libraries such as Pandas and Seaborn, they offer you great flexibility for data manipulation and advanced visualization. Matplotlib is it's also a Python library, but it's specifically used for creating static, animated, and interactive visualization in projects. Seaborn builds on Matplotlib. It also offers advanced statistical visualizations. The pros there is like easier syntax and default styles. Plotly, also a Python data library. It provides interactive and web-ready visualizations, ideal for data dynamic exploration. R is another popular tool. It's widely used more for statistical computing and detailed data analysis. And finally, Tableau and Excel, they are very user-friendly, and also they're very intuitive. It's very easy to learn for using and creating a lot of visual exploration and data presentation. So it is key that you have to find the right tool for the right problem. now data size consideration. So based on the volume of data that you have, you need to understand what is the right tool that can handle, create the data analysis or data visualization with optimal performance. Your problem's complexity might require some advanced tools with special features and capabilities. So again, you'll have to look at the various tools that's available, and depending on the complexity of the problem, decide. User expertise, again, like I said, some of the tools are very user intuitive. So if your project is going to be using some new joiners or like a new not less experienced professionals, then probably go for the more intuitive tools like Tableau. If you have complex technical people, then you can always go for Python or R. And then lastly, in terms of balancing the functionality with your project's goals, also helps you determine what is the right tool for the project. So just a few concluding points. So in academic research, EDA plays a great role in trend identification. So I think by now you already understand how EDA helps with spotting important patterns or trends, so especially within complex data sets. It's very easy to find out if there's any kind of odd fallout, and they can be picked up as sort of anomaly detection. Exploratory analysis helps you detect unusual data points and anomalies. Again, that may give you better research outcomes. Hypothesis generation. So insights gained from EDA helps researchers in formulating better hypothesis to enable further study. So just to summarize and some of the essential concepts and techniques. So the purpose of EDA helps to understand data patterns and identify anomalies before you start formal modeling using AI/ML tools. Mastering techniques like summary statistics and data plotting is very important for effective data exploration. So we covered a lot of EDA techniques across various stages today. Handling data quality, addressing missing values. So the quality of the data becomes very key for you to get accurate quality analytic outcomes. So again, use the different tools and techniques to make sure the data quality is good. And lastly, creating effective visualizations. So basically, to present the analytic outcomes of your data, you need a good insights on visualization. So what I would encourage you to is continue to work with regular data sets. There are a lot of free data sets, especially on forums like Kaggle, Kaggle. Gives you free data sets which you can download. If you can install Python, which is again free, you can always work a lot of tutorials out there, new tools out there that enhances the efficiency and broaden skill sets, and of course, collaborative learning. Okay, so to conclude, importance of data analysis, exploratory data analysis, it helps you understand complex data sets, discover patterns. Visualization skills helps you transform that data into more insightful visuals to help decision making. And of course, for students, mastering these skills empower them to excel in their data-driven work environments. So that's all I have today to cover. Back to the host.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Yeah, see, on behalf of St. Peter's College of Engineering and Technology and the departments of AIDS and Information Technology, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Mohammed Riaz, Vice President Technology, JB Mohan, Singapore, for delivering us with such an enriching session on the topic explanatory data analysis and data visualization. So your talk was really very clear, and it has made the topics like EDA, which is, we have now really understood why EDA is so critical in engineering research analytics. And you have really made it clear, given a clear understanding between the univariate, bivariate, and multivariate data, and some topics like the essential techniques which is needed to explore the data effectively. And the way you have explained the content with the data visualization topics and the different videos that you have projected have really highlighted the topics and have made it really clear clear to us. So we really appreciate the effort that you have taken and the passion that you have taken in sharing your expertise knowledge with us. So we thank also all the participants who have been so attentive and active, and we also appreciate the continuous cooperation in making this session an interactive and meaningful one. So with this, we conclude our session 3, and we're looking forward to join you in another 10 minutes. So we'll come back at 7:35 and we'll start the session 4. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thanks, Mr.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks
Yeah.
for the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.